Playoff season is here, and the only thing better than game day predictions are the foods that come with them. Introducing Tums Fantasy Foodball Pool, brought to you by Tums, America's #1 antacid brand, and DraftKings. Each week leading up to the big game, turn football into foodball by building your best game day plate for a shot at winning a share of $40,000 in cash prizes. Inspired by game day bites and tailgate treats, join the Tums Foodball action during this playoff season's most heartburn-inducing time. Visit DraftKings.com/Tums Foodball between January 6th and February 9th to enter for free and select your game day plate before the start of each playoff round. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See terms at DraftKings.com/Tums Foodball. When you feel the heat of the game, don't let heartburn keep you on the sidelines. Try Tums Chewy Bites with a tasty outer shell and soft center for fast relief of heartburn, acid indigestion, and upset stomach. Check out Tums Gummy Bites featuring a soft and easy-to-chew format for fast relief of occasional heartburn, acid indigestion, sour stomach, and upset stomach. Both available at Amazon, Target, and other major retailers nationwide. And for more heartburn relief fun, be sure to follow Tums at Tums Official on Instagram and TikTok.
It's time to eat.
What are you hungry for?
Sit down and get ready to consume an abundance of fantasy football knowledge from Ross Tucker and John Daigle.
Feed me now. I'm starving.
On the Fantasy Feast Eatin' podcast.
Yeah, let's eat, baby. It is the Fantasy Feast Eatin' podcast. We are, of course, presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years. You know that. You love it. You love all of our shows, hopefully. The Ross Tucker Football Podcast is daily, Monday through Friday, through the Super Bowl. Then we'll scale back a little bit to 3 days a week. It's your daily fill of what you need to go know what's going on in the NFL. Peter King, the legend, was on today. Tomorrow we'll have Greg Cosell. Friday I'll give you my picks. So certainly make sure you're checking out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Even Money is the betting podcast. College Draft Podcast, especially relevant right now with the college football playoff semifinals coming up the next 2 nights, Thursday and Friday. We make our bets against the spread for those college games, tell you about the best prospects in those games. You're going to want to check that out. This is the Fantasy Feast, which I love for a bunch of different reasons. One of which is because John Daigle is a star. You heard it here first, if you didn't already know that, at NotJDaigle on social media. He's from EstablishTheRun.com, where, by the way, use the code FEAST to get a discount over there on all their tremendous content. It's funny because we're at the time of year now where we're talking a lot of DFS for the playoff games, but we're also just talking football and prop betting and what he's expecting in these games, right? So even if you just want to talk about matchups, John has you. You're specifically interested in DFS, listen to John because he's talking to you. You really care about prop betting because there's more prop bets in the playoffs, John is talking to you as well. And today, he's doing it to all of you from Sri Lanka. I'm not joking. I'm actually recording a podcast with someone in Sri Lanka, which I don't really know where that is. And I think that's one of the top 5 weirdest names for a country I've ever heard. SRI space LANKA. So I feel like we can't bury the lead here, John. Why are you in Sri Lanka? Why are you recording this from Sri Lanka
First of
right
all,
now?
as men and women search for their legacy to end with in life, I have to be the first person ever to talk about the wild card round from Sri Lanka. I'll go ahead and put my footsteps on that one in the world. But I'm actually here. I've been in South Asia now, Southeast Asia, including Bengaluru and Chennai, India, for the last 10 days, celebrating 2 of my lovely and best friends' wedding, Leslie Alton and Ruger Vishwishware. Ruger, who actually listens to our show all year long as well, so shout out to him. But yes, because of that, we took a massive trip, all of his friends in the wedding party, across South India, basically, that included petting elephants, going surfing, staying in safari camps, going through palaces, you name it, we've probably done it in India, and I am in the last of it in Sri Lanka, getting a couple more surfing trips and hiking trips in before I head back to America and record the divisional round with you next week.
From
Chicago, yes. Back to a normal time zone since I am now 11 and a half hours ahead for the last couple of weeks of my life.
Absolutely incredible. We got 6 games to get to, but you got to tell me what has been like the coolest part?
The more intimate part, I would say, is I'm a big fan of, I believe in found family, especially as someone who was not only adopted personally in my own life, but also has lived all over for this career, including like different continents. I lived in Melbourne, Australia, for example, for a couple years. I've lived in Canada. I've been to a bunch of places. And so the fact that I could then celebrate with friends and basically stay up late into multiple evenings with his family from Chennai, India, like in hotel rooms with hookah and just sharing drinks and like talking about their personal experience from another part of the world. I think that to me, like that found family and that intimacy of what you get to learn about your friends and love with them, I think that's been the best part of the trip and why everyone travels, by the way. That's the kind of experiences we look for.
Wow. That is awesome, man. You are awesome. I love it. I love that. And now let's talk Chargers, Texans. Speaking of found family and speaking of, life-altering experiences, it is our annual Saturday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Houston Texans home playoff game. This time it's against Jim Harbaugh and the L.A. Chargers.
I have paid attention to everything, including waking up early to watch some big games, including that Lions-Vikings Sunday Night Football showdown. And before I even logged back in with the sparing Wi-Fi here to see when the Texans played, to your point, yes, I knew immediately the Texans were going to log the Saturday afternoon game as they do every single year, hosting the Chargers here since they won the division. And it is interesting for Houston. I will say that. On the surface, we do believe the Chargers are the better outright team, playing better defense, have the better offense, and maybe that's the case because despite the Texans' woes, the one thing they've done good all year is still, under D'Amico Ryans, create pressure. They can crater the pocket and get after the quarterback. The issue, of course, is that the Chargers not only run the ball well, but Justin Herbert has also been amazing under pressure, 6th in completion rate. So I'm still a little bit worried about that defense holding up. Where I think the Texans may have a chance to stick around is that Jesse Minter's defense for the Chargers leans on zone coverage in particular and 3 to 4 safeties typically over the top to limit big plays. Here's the thing. The Texans don't make big plays through the air on offense. That's not their MO this year. They would like to, but CJ Stroud has obviously struggled with the numerous injuries they've had on offense, especially at wide receiver. So while I still think Nico Collins is a safer play you have to spend up for on DraftKings and DFS, the real key here is I think they want to and can successfully lean on Joe Mixon. They want that to be their identity as a running team, and the Chargers are allowing the 3rd most yards per carry with the 6th highest rate of 15-yard runs in the league. They allow big plays on the ground. So the Texans may be able to sneak by as long as they can just play sound defense and keep it competitive with the Chargers. I do think there's a chance they cover and do it on the back of Joe Mixon here.
Ooh, okay. I like that very much. That makes a lot of sense to me. A lot of zone coverage, you're right. And I think the philosophy is we don't want to give up explosives, so we'll let you run it a little bit. What about anything notable when the Chargers have the ball? Any guys in particular, Dobbins or Ladd McConkey, that you're looking at?
Well, it really seems like Gus Edwards is going to be out. And we've seen since J.K. Dobbins returned, I was a little bit skeptical that he was going to run into the Nick Chubb wall and just be inefficient, but that doesn't seem to be the case because he has been explosive in the past couple of games since he's come back. So if Gus Edwards is going to be out and we can assume every touch for J.K. Dobbins, it does seem like one where if they get a chance to, they would just give him the rock and get out of the way. So I would say he's more of a mid-priced, high-floor player you also want to target on DraftKings if you believe game script goes that way.
Let's get to the next game. I'll be on the sideline for this one for Westwood 1. My first sideline duty. Since the last time I was in Baltimore for the AFC Championship game against Kansas City last year, it is the Steelers and the Ravens. And man, John, these are two teams going in much different directions. Steelers like the third team ever to lose 4 games in a row going into the playoffs. The Ravens are one of the only teams ever to win 3 games in a row or whatever it is by double digits going into the postseason. So these are two ships passing in the night right now.
And they've played 2 really separate games so far, too. Recall that first one. It was bad weather, a 2-point margin of difference in that. But also remember, the Ravens had multiple penalties, including both on offense and defense, that really dragged that game down. A lot of false starts, and were just off sync on offense. Then they come back in that second round and destroy the Steelers 34-17 by multiple scores. And you would think that's the kind of game we should expect here, where the Ravens just beat them handily, especially after the last month that you've already discussed. The Steelers haven't scored more than 17 points in over a month, and his last 3 games, Russell Wilson, just 1 touchdown to 1 interception. Really no potency whatsoever to push back. The thing is, the elephant in the room that I'm sure everyone's going to discuss, and maybe we should dive into it deeper. Maybe it's not just because he shows up to the postseason and then suddenly clamors, but Lamar Jackson's playoff record is on the line and the discussion point here. Not only 2-4 in the postseason through 6 playoff games for Lamar, but also 9 touchdowns to 9 turnovers from scrimmage and just a 57.4% completion rate in those 3 games. So yes, it's a situation where the way they are playing, the Ravens, again, should be able to win this one by 2 or 3 scores. But also, we have to see how Lamar handles it. Not only that, but remember, it doesn't seem like Zay Flowers is going to play. Still up in the air, I believe, last time I looked at the injury report and the rumors that were coming out. But if Flowers does not play, obviously, one less of an explosive option for them. And also, it's going to change how they run their offense. In the past, for example, Flowers has been off the field for 83 plays for this Ravens offense this season. And in those 83 plays, they've instead leaned on their tight ends heavily. Both Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews leading the team with 22% target shares in those contests. Likely runs more of his routes from the outside because he is more of a prototypical wide receiver than Mark Andrews, who's a tight end. And I do think it's interesting the Steelers have actually allowed the most fantasy points to receivers from the outside this year. So I do like sneaking in Isaiah Likely into our DFS lineups if Zay Flowers is ruled out.
Ooh, that's a juicy one right there. That's what I love. Steelers with the ball, what do we need to know?
We're going to see what Russell Wilson can accomplish to George Pickens downfield. And the thing is, that's really been the 2-man show there. Russ, Pickens, and Pat Freiermuth to a lesser extent. I don't think, as they've showed us in the past, they can have success running the ball against Baltimore. Najee Harris did okay in their first game, but it just seems like one where, again, it's going to depend how you attack your DFS lineups, what you think this game script will be. And if you're trying to be unique and get to the top of tournaments, you can tell yourself a story that if the field believes the Ravens dominate this one, maybe it isn't the case after all. And maybe, since we've seen historically Lamar struggle in the postseason, that it's the Steelers who come away with a low-scoring, brutal win that's won through the trenches. And so if that's the case, then Jaylen Warren, Najee Harris, in that order, would be my plays for DFS, maybe even sneaking in the Steelers' defense. But again, that's for large field tournaments where we have to get ahead of a lot of different other players in that field.
All right, let's move on to the Sunday slate. 3 games on Sunday. It's interesting. I didn't realize the first 3 games were AFC and the last 3 games are NFC till just now. It's the Broncos and the Bills in Buffalo.
And, of course, spread out through 3 days this year, too, which is also odd with a Monday Night Football game. It's a tough task for Bo Nix. Definitely the toughest game he'll play all year. And yes, the Bills secondary, even since they got Matt Milano back over the last month, and he's been in and out of the lineup in that time, but since they got him back, they've still been susceptible to some big performances from quarterbacks. Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff included, throwing 3+ touchdowns to get them in weeks 15 and 16. But all of their touchdowns, literally all of them from Goff and Allen, came from a clean pocket. came when they weren't under duress with the Bills attacking them, since the Bills are still creating pressure at the 11th highest rate in the league. And that's the thing, because Bo Nix has been better from a clean pocket, 24 touchdowns and only 7 interceptions. But there's going to be so few plays that he needs to make that, and to his credit, he has made, including that overtime the bomb to Marvin Mims that sent them to overtime, a beautiful throw downfield that only Mims could get. The defender didn't even have a chance. But he's going to have to make those plays and really not let them slide. No mistakes here, since we know what's coming on the other side of the ball for the Bills offense. And that's kind of the key for me, is that the Bills' run defense, the Broncos could still attack, but they're going to have to match the Bills point for point. They can't just get by running the ball and then instead asking the Bills and Josh Allen to make mistake. Also because of the way Denver plays defense. Denver's running 36% of their snaps from man coverage, and that's what Allen has been incredible against this year. Jared Goff, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen lead the league with 19 touchdowns against man coverage and only 5 sacks for Allen against that type of deployment too. So I think it is going to be a good day for Allen as Whiskey, the big dog here, barks. I'm about to let him out. And I do think the Bills offense will have a lot of success.
Playoff season is here, and the only thing better than game day predictions are the foods that come with them. Introducing Tums Fantasy Foodball Pool, brought to you by Tums, America's #1 antacid brand, and DraftKings. Each week leading up to the big game, turn football into foodball by building your best game day plate for a shot at winning a share of $40,000 in cash prizes. Inspired by game day bites and tailgate treats, join the Tums foodball action during this playoff season's most heartburn-inducing time. Visit DraftKings.com/foodball between January 6th and February 9th to enter for free and select your game day plate before the start of each playoff round. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See terms at DraftKings.com/TumsFoodball. When you feel the heat of the game, don't let heartburn keep you on the sidelines. Try Tums Chewy Bites with a tasty outer shell and soft center for fast relief of heartburn, acid indigestion, and upset stomach. Check out Tums Gummy Bites, featuring a soft and easy-to-chew format for fast relief of occasional heartburn, acid indigestion, sour stomach, and upset stomach. Both available at Amazon, Target, and other major retailers nationwide. And for more heartburn relief fun, be sure to follow Tums at Tums Official on Instagram and TikTok. So it all leads up to this. I've been talking about Smirnoff all season because they're not only the official vodka sponsor of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, they're also an official vodka partner of the NFL and Super Bowl 59. What I love about it is you can get the world's #1 vodka without breaking the bank. Unbelievable. You don't want to be paying some of these other prices for vodka. Absolutely ridiculous. I had a decent amount of vodka drinks last week, which were lovely while I was with my family celebrating New Year's Eve. Big fan of vodka with Gatorade or those type of mixers where you're hydrating while you're getting some incredible Smirnoff. Delicious. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff #21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Pricing is at the sole discretion of the retailer, may vary by state. Please do not share with anyone under legal drinking age. Smirnoff, we do game days. All right, the other game I'll be at, John. This one I'll be in the booth for the Packers and the Eagles, Sunday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It'll be on Fox Television in the city of brotherly love. What are you looking at in this one?
This is not the first game like they played in Brazil in week 1, where the awful grass in that stadium made these two teams equivalent opponents. This is going to be a much different one, especially considering what the Eagles' defense has become since returning from their bye. Still allowing a league low in yards per attempt, and in particular, in stopping the run, because we know that's the Packers' identity. That's what they want to do. They want to give the ball to Josh Jacobs and get out of the way, especially with this Jordan Love elbow injury now lingering. But even if the Packers chose to do that, again, you can't do that against Philadelphia. It's not only their pass defense that's been amazing for 10 plus weeks now, the run defense also still allowing just 4 yards per carry, still allowing the 6th lowest rate of explosive runs against them. So it seems like it's going to be tough sledding and skating uphill for the Packers offense and what they decide to do. Jaden Reed was good in that first game as the Packers were attacking the Eagles from the slot. But again, since that time, Eagles have got Cooper DeJean back, and they're entirely different offense that can create pressure. So I think the Packers' key to winning is by allowing them to lose their identity and instead attacking through the air. But can they do that successfully against what I consider to be the best defense in the entire league? I don't know, and unpersonally, I don't think so. This seems like one where I'll even be betting with the Eagles. I'll be curious to listen to your other betting shows as well to see if your guests align with that thought. And for the Eagles side of the ball, Packers playing a ton of zone coverage in the back. Only the Bucs are actually playing more zone coverage than Green Bay. A.J. Brown can get it done no matter what. In particular, he does smash against man, but Devonta Smith does have better splits against zone this year. That's the kind of player I'm looking for, especially on DraftKings. Think about it. It's hard to pay up for all of these expensive wide receivers because there are a lot of studs in the wild card round. So if we're looking for the ancillary options who could provide wide receiver one upside, Devonta Smith is where I'm looking to as a mid-priced guy.
Ooh, okay, I like that. I like that quite a bit. Especially the nugget of him against zone coverage. You're right, they're both good against zone, but I do think it seems like Devontae sits down and settles down in those zones a little bit better. So good stuff there, John. All right, what about Sunday night? It is the Washington Commanders against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You know, it's funny. Every one of these games, their quarterback has played well this year. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a secret which teams are in the playoffs and which teams aren't.
And the Bucs are slowly getting some of their cornerbacks back. Perhaps Antoine Winfield as well. They're still just so banged up in their secondary throughout the season that maybe it doesn't matter in the end anyways, but this does seem like one that could go over to total. It's one of the few games, these next two we're going to talk about, are the only two contests that have not decreased in total throughout the week at DraftKings. This one, I believe, last I checked, sitting at a 50-point total as well. And that makes a lot of sense based on not only what these offenses are, but what the Commanders are probably going to do to try to combat Baker Mayfield and the Bucs passing offense. Because the Commanders, and this is a show since now we can get down to the nitty gritty in each of these teams, so we're not talking about many games. We can actually talk about like how they play defense and what they do, which is why I'll cite that the Commanders are 6th in man coverage, including 30% in cover one, and 2nd in completion. And Baker this year, 2nd in completion rate, 7th in yards per attempt, with 15 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions against man coverage. He's been incredible. Not only that, but, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that Mike Evans also dominates you if you leave him on an island. Mike Evans has earned 31% of his targets against man coverage this year for a 75% catch rate and 4 touchdowns. Jalen McMillan, if you want to keep it going, he's scored 7 touchdowns over his last 5 games to close the season, and in that stretch, 17 yards per catch and 9th in yards per route run against man coverage. These are the guys that beat you if Dan Quinn plays that style. And that's what he does. So I love the Bucs passing offense in particular. If you're looking for one stack on either the Sunday 3-game slate or you're playing all 6 games and trying to stack one offense, I love Baker double stacks the most here across from the Commanders defense.
Baker double stacks meaning what?
As in, you're playing on DFS, Baker Mayfield, and then you're stacking with 2 partners, not just Mike Evans. You're playing him with Mike Evans and Jalen McMillan. That's what we call a double stack. I should have let the listeners know that.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't know. I know what stacking means. Double stack, I didn't know. I thought that's what you meant, but I wasn't 100% sure.
And if you play another person with Baker, by the way, like if you play Bucky Irving, for example, that's called an onslaught. This show's just going to become DFS terminology for us.
Wait, hold on a second. A quarterback with 3 skill guys is not a triple stack. It's called an onslaught?
It's called an onslaught, yes.
Who comes up with these terms?
It's been around since the beginning of DraftKings. You'd have to ask Kalish about it. And then if you want to go beyond that, we give up after that, all DFS players. If you play 5 from the same offense, which is allowed on DraftKings, we just call it all the guys. You just play all the guys. It's that easy.
All the guys. I love it. All right, what about the Commanders when they got the ball?
A little bit more worried. Jane Daniels has honestly been done like poking holes in him, right? He's proven us wrong in so many situations. I think back to a few weeks ago against the Eagles game where had no business. No quarterback has any business throwing 5 touchdowns against them. He didn't have any issues doing so. And so no matter what I say, I feel like Jaden Daniels is good enough to just usurp that expectation. Having said that, the Bucs are still blitzing at the league's highest rate. That's how Todd Bowles wants to play defense, is send extra pass rushers and then drop back into zone, forcing you to find windows under the fly. And for as great as Jaden Daniels has been, he's still been at least median, lukewarm against the blitz this year. 13th in completion rate, 18th in yards per attempt. So that's the issue he's going to run into and try to have to solve that puzzle in game. The Bucs are allowing the most points to outside receivers, the second most points compared to the Steelers, as I talked about. And that's where, of course, Terry McLaurin is running over 90% of his routes is from the left side in particular and the boundary. So Terry McLaurin, obviously, my favorite play here from Jaden Daniels. But this is just a game where you're probably on DFS and DraftKings. You're trying to stack 5-6 players from this game as a whole because we think it could be the highest scoring one.
Ooh, okay. Last but not least, Monday Night Football. It's the Vikings and the Rams.
Ever since their win at home against the Bills, all the air has basically been deflated out of the Rams offense. 12, 19, 13 points their last games that the starters played. And yes, 3 wins in that time, but Matthew Stafford averaged less than 6 yards per attempt in each of those 3 contests. I don't know if they lost confidence. I don't know if they wanted to become a running team under Kyron Williams, since he did have at least 23 touches in 2 of those 3 games. I'm not sure if they just saw matchup advantages against the Cardinals, Niners, and Jets and wanted to run against them in particular, but it has really scaled back, Sean McVay has, from Stafford and being a passing offense, especially compared to, again, that Bills game where they hosted them and they took them wire to wire in a 44-42 point win. So it will be interesting to see who the Rams want to and are going to be in this game. I will say, remember, we saw these 2 teams play in Week 8. And that was about the time the Rams were getting healthy again, including Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and their offensive line. And Matthew Stafford matched his season-high mark of 4 touchdowns in that one. It was also blitzed by Brian Flores, who the Vikings blitzed the league's second highest rate. And against the blitz in that game, Matthew Stafford tagged him. He went 10 of 13 for 9.8 yards per attempt against the blitz. So we'll be curious to see if Flores also is it even possible for him to come off the clutch and actually try to get pressure without sending extra pass rushers, since Matthew Stafford is such a high IQ veteran quarterback. He can easily diagnose where those blitzes are coming from and beat you that way. The Vikings have allowed the 7th most fantasy points to opposing slot receivers. So I would love to tell you that this is the game where Cooper Kupp also gets back into action. It, of course, takes a leap of faith to get Cooper Kupp here. He is playing from the slot, especially since Puka Nacua is just dominating targets right now for this Rams offense. I will say my one strategy, though, and quickly on the Vikings offense before I talk about the strategy for Cooper Kupp. Vikings offense, yes. Sam Darnold, Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson. Yes, Darnold played a very poor game in that showdown against Detroit, but just think back to what he had done the past month and in this last game he played, where even Justin Jefferson went over 100 yards here. So still like Justin Jefferson in this matchup in particular. But for Cooper Kupp, since it is a tournament and you're allowed to late swap into Monday, just make sure that if you have players who did not do well, late swap into Cooper Kupp to have an advantage in DFS tournaments.
Love it. Great stuff, John. Thank you so much. I'm stuffed. We're done.
Thanks for tuning in to Fantasy Feast. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcasts on your favorite platform.